Yo, did you see that chick that fainted?
Yo, I was like, what the fuck? The funny thing is, she was like, oh my god, I'm double vaxxed. I got my rabies shot, or whatever the fuck she said. She fucking hit the ground, man.
She was like, apparently God loves me. Oh! I was like, oh shit.
I was like, god damn.
I like how like everybody just looked at her because they thought it was it was so ironic. They thought it was the routine.
Yeah.
I was like, give her some help.
I'm double vaxxed, bitch. Jesus loves me. Oh. I was like, yo, low key, man. I wanna. Jez, Jez went live earlier, man. I kind of want to watch his stream.
Oh, bitch, lick me.
Oh my god. Oh my god, like man.
He, he did. Such a bitch. I'm surprised, man. I'm surprised you didn't have anything to say
Who, me?
about I'm talking to Ken, about the fucking show I did.
What about it?
You kept trying to go in the show. I kept looking at you like try to join and shit. And then when I finally talked to you, you just like, oh, it was nothing.
Oh, I mean, well, we kind of spun off into a different conversation, that's why. Yeah, man, I wanted to jump in and say some shit, man, but, you know, my freaking phone wasn't working.
No, it's not your
So,
phone. This is what I told you. It's Android. I mean, like, what about it though?
it was, I don't know, man. It's just been killing me, man, like, seeing a lot of people talk about this whole, um, like, people keep saying, like, Microsoft is such an underdog, man, and you know, you even Destin, yo, Destin made a freaking video like yesterday, man, talking about like how the only way, nigga, he literally said the only way Microsoft can compete, right, is if they buy Activision Blizzard, right? And I cringe, bro. When I say I cringed fucking hard as shit, I cringed so hard when he said that shit, man. I
Well,
couldn't believe it.
you heard the niggas in the show, right? Where they was like, oh well. I was like, yo, what were they if they didn't make the acquisition? What were they going to do?
Nothing, bro. I'm telling you, yo, ever since they acquired what you call it, Bethesda, man, that shit's been holding them like by a lifeline by a thread, man. It's been crazy,
Pressed ominous regarding
you know.
Salazar Slytherin's scriptorium, but my efforts were in vain. Meet me outside the
So
Slytherin
I don't
camp.
know, man. That
I'm here
whole
to talk.
notion of people like, you know, people saying that Microsoft is the underdog and all this type of shit, and Microsoft, you know, they what was the other thing that they were saying, man? It was some shit like uh like
Somebody got
they
like a
didn't
lot of noise in the background.
Oh,
they, they were basically saying like, you know, Microsoft didn't really have the opportunities, you know, to compete, you know what I'm saying? And that shit is so wrong, man. I can't even, I'm like, yo, no. And what makes it even worse is that they've been in the because of the fact that they've been in the industry for so long, you know, and people are still saying that shit. Like, bro, like these dudes have literally been in the industry for like 2 decades, man. You know, and you guys are still saying, right? Instead of holding them accountable, right? Instead of saying like, hey, yo, bro, maybe you guys need to, you know, like try something a little bit different, like, you know, no. I mean, they're doing great, man. You know, either that, right, or they say something like, what you call it? Like you hear people saying now with this Activision deal, man. Like the only way that they can compete is by spending all this money for the Activision IPs and stuff like that, man. I don't know, man. It just kind of falls in line with what I was telling you yesterday, man, or like within the last couple of days, whatever.
Well, the thing
Um,
is, what's
You're
crazy is
here?
that
Brilliant.
they kept saying some wild shit like in that place in the space or whatever.
I
Um,
received your owl. What happened
what
with
were they
Ominous?
saying?
I
Because I
told
wasn't
him
there the
none of
whole
us
time.
will be able to
yeah, I
avoid
know.
dark magic forever. So the more we know about Salazar Slytherin and the dark arts, the
So
better prepared
basically,
we'll
Speak.
be.
what they ended
Unfortunately,
up
only
saying was
Hogwarts
like,
knows the
because the
location of
guy
the
was like,
Scriptorium's entrance,
what are
but
you
Ominous
ranting and
wouldn't
raving
tell me.
about?
Perhaps I should have a chat
You
with
know,
Ominous. You?
Uh
Well, I
huh.
suppose it's
hold
worth a
on for a
try.
minute.
But don't
Somebody's
get your hopes
mic is
up.
like loud as hell.
Ominous is annoyingly stubborn. Nothing new. I know where he is. I'll lead you to him and then leave you to it. Come on.
Mr.
He's this way.
Tazio.
It's like we got,
Keep an eye out. Never know who's watching. Although
so
that hasn't
like
stopped us before.
they were saying some wild
Strangely
shit
speaking,
like
perhaps, we were caught.
we
Damned
got games.
poltergeist. Such a
And
nuisance.
they started listening to games, and then like Silky came in there, and he was like, "Well, Sony has the same thing." I said, "Yo, can you say anything good about Xbox without comparing it to something that Sony's doing? Is there something that you can do?" Like, because it's like every time you mention Xbox, if something's wrong with Xbox, then you say, "Well, Sony is whatever."
There
That's
he is.
Yeah.
also a negative. What
Good
is the
luck.
positive? So he
Yeah.
was like, "Yo," he was like, "That's why I know how he rolls, so that's why I said what I said." So
What are you
ultimately
doing here?
he was
Hello,
ultimately like,
Ominous.
hold on, let me pause
Do you
this
have a
shit.
moment?
What is it? What have
Hold
you and
on.
Sebastian been up to now?
I owe you an apology, Ominous. I wasn't honest with you before about the Undercroft. Sebastian did show it to me. He wanted me to have a safe place to practice some spells, to try and catch up to the other fifth years. He didn't think you'd mind.
I suppose that makes sense. It's just Sebastian's been pestering me lately about something and I'm frustrated with him.
Don't tell me he's still going on about, what was it, a scriptorium?
He told you about that.
He did. We were talking about Hogwarts founders and he mentioned it. Wouldn't say much more though.
Give me a
Yes,
second.
well, he seems to think
I'm
it
waiting
contains
to
the answer to
pause
saving
this shit.
her. I think it's likely full of dark magic
What
that
is
is
it?
best left
What are you in the middle
untouched.
of a mission or
Wait.
something?
No,
You've never been
it's Hawking.
inside?
Of course not.
It's
I only
Hogwarts.
know about it because of my favorite aunt, Noctua.
Hogwarts.
I'm
She
waiting
thought
for
like
them
I
to
did.
stop talking.
Didn't agree with the family on the use of dark magic. In fact, she'd hoped to convince my family that there was more to Salazar Slytherin than worshipping pureblood status. She'd heard of this scriptorium and thought its contents might shed some light on him. She even found the secret entrance in this very corridor. She wrote
Let us
regularly to my
compete.
father about her efforts to gain
Get outta here
access,
with that
and then she
bullshit, man.
simply vanished. No one else ever tried to enter.
Okay, so now I stopped they stopped talking. So Silky said that because he was like, if Sony didn't buy, because he wanted to go to straight to first party games, right? He was like, if Sony
Mhm.
didn't buy Housemarque and Insomniac, they wouldn't have any games either. I was like, what the fuck? Like, just because Returnal and Spider Man came out, I was like, nigga, they had Sucker Punch and Naughty Dog and Guerrilla Games and fucking the Little Big Planet people. And I'm like, yo, that's why I was like, don't mention. I was like, yo, the stipulation is he left eventually because he couldn't. He was saying that they had games and this is always the argument. This is always funny. He says, what do you have for 2023 on Sony's end? What Final Fantasy? You can't count that because if you count that, that's not first party. I said, all you got is Spider Man, and that's all you guys can account for. And then somebody was like, yo, there was some VR stuff. What? Oh, well, DLC? I was like, oh my god, yo. So all the VR is DLC, right? Okay, all right. He was like, even if you don't, I was like, even if you don't count the VR, right? Sony has a reputation for the last three fucking generations, right? Where they made games and they fulfilled their promise. Then they wanted to move on to delays. Sony delayed like Horizon and stuff. Like, it was 2 fucking months. I said, well, what about? I said, what's the game called again?
What, Starfield?
Starfield. I was like, I remember that was supposed to come out last year, right? And now it's been delayed a year. And then they were talking about Red. No, they were talking about uh 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 Hellblade. Is it Hellblade? It's Hellblade. Yeah, they was talking about Hellblade, right? And I was like, homie, you want to talk about Hellblade? I said you should be worried about the game. I said, well, because of engines, right? I said if you all you had to show for your game as part of an engine, which they show clouds, it should make you worried that they don't have a whole game. I said not only that, but then they're using Unreal 5, which is already made. And the best that they could show is this very on rails demo with just rocks in it and some people. And that's all we've seen. Y'all don't think that's smoke and mirrors?
Bro, they just updated, man, and showed everybody some images of some
That's a bit
blurry ass
unnerving.
rocks, man.
I suppose
I
you can
couldn't help but
remind me to
laugh, man.
answers
It
about
was
what
so.
happened to your aunt.
I had to
It
make
does
fun of
pose a
it, man,
risk.
Aunt Noctua went down
because
this
it was so
path with
ridiculous.
good
Everybody was
intentions
like, "Oh
when
my
lost
god,
her
look at
life.
Hellblade!
I don't
Yeah,
want
look
the
at how
same to
good it
happen
looks." I
again.
looked at
You
this shit,
don't
man.
know
It's
that
some
history will
blurry ass
repeat
rocks.
itself.
Like,
Besides,
what the
you said
fuck are
your
you
aunt
doing,
fought
dog?
like you.
You
This
know.
could honor her memory,
Right.
Um,
get you answers about Slytherin
but
and Sebastian answers
yeah,
for Anne.
it's man. Look, I had this
Your
dude,
aunt
man,
pursued
jump into
this
one of my
alone.
comments, right?
We could do
And
it
he was
together.
like, it was him and this
I
other
see what
dude
you've done here.
that
I
were following each
confess,
other.
you've convinced
And
me.
he was like,
I
yo,
didn't think
man,
it possible. Very well.
they were
I
having this
shall tell you what
conversation
I
about
know.
Wolverine. They were like,
Fetch
oh
Sebastian,
man,
I'll wait.
sometimes Sony
I
announces their
hope
games too early and all
we
this type of
don't
shit.
regret this.
And I'm looking at
Sebastian,
the messages.
over
I'm
here.
like, yo, why the fuck are you even talking about
These
Wolverine,
braziers
right?
grant access to the
And
scriptorium.
this dude was
Now
like,
you're
oh
sharing.
man, it's the
You wouldn't tell me when I
conveniently, right?
practically begged.
Conveniently, it's the
It
only
wasn't
game that I'm
you who
looking
told me
forward
what I
to,
needed to hear.
right, on PS5,
Opening the
right?
entrance has something to
And
do with threes.
then I'm like,
Well,
okay,
3
so
heads are
literally
missing 1.
like
Remember,
95% of the
two heads are
fucking
better
games
than
that
one.
Sony had announced, right,
By that
since
logic, 3
the
is better
beginning
than
of the
2.
console generation,
Simple
the
mathematics,
one and
Ominous.
only game that you want to play, right, is the one and only game that they don't have any information for, right, which is Wolverine. No information, no dates, nothing, right? I said, okay, that's convenient, right? So we go further into the conversation. I'm like, hey,
Brazier went out on
I'm like, but hey,
I wonder if it's
what
a
about
clue.
Hellblade though? I'm like, you have all the, and the conversation is about the game being announced too early. I'm like, dude, Hellblade was announced like 4 years ago, like almost at this point, right? They have like 3 games. No, it's like 2 or 3 games, man. That was
We're
announced
ready
like
for
4 years
this.
ago, right? And there's been like almost no updates, no information, fucking nothing, right? But that's cool. You know what I'm saying? We ain't worried about that. We're cool with some blurry ass rocks and a fucking on rails demo. This chick running in and out of a cave. You know what I'm saying? Whatever, right? And I say that I'm like, yo, you shouldn't be worried about fucking Wolverine, dude. Like, I'm just gonna be straight up with you, man. Why the fuck are you talking about Wolverine? I'm like, the only games that Sony doesn't have, the only games
Journal entry.
that Sony
Signed
doesn't
by
have any
Noctua
like
Gould.
information for,
Gould.
right?
Ominous. Your family
Are
was here.
really one. As a
I
matter of
know.
fact,
She was my
Wolverine
aunt.
and Spider-Man, which
You
is coming out
knew?
this year. But even
Didn't
all
tell
of the
me.
games that they have announced,
Ominous.
right, that haven't
The
already
journal
been
mentions many
released at this
challenges
point,
ahead.
have only been
That's
announced
why
for
I
more
said
than a
this
year.
could be dangerous.
You know what I'm saying?
Aunt Noctua
So I'm
kept my
like,
father
why the fuck
informed
are you
until
talking
she
about
vanished.
Wolverine being like announced too early, and you're all good talking about not talking about Hellblade. You
I
know what I'm
mentioned
saying?
that too. I said that, if Sony announces games, I said for the last 4 years, right? Sony has been basically announcing their games and releasing them within a 6 month period. You know what I'm
I'd
saying?
say 6 to 12 months.
Six
I
to
give,
12 months. But
yeah.
for argument purposes, you know what I mean. So I was like, if you weren't paying attention, right?
A snake.
That must be the voice I hear.
Hold on for a minute. Yeah, I was like, if you're not paying attention, right, then that's really that's what the fuck is going on.
Mm-hmm.
I said, even if it was, well, now that you say it, if it was a year or whatever, we already know what to expect because Sony basically has a rapport. I said for the last 22 years, Microsoft's rapport is terrible. I said, y'all keep talking about his Xbox. I said, I'm talking about Phil Spencer.
Is ancient, sinister.
You hear a voice.
It started
Yeah,
when you
see, I
repaired
wanted
that
to.
relief.
That's some of
I
the
hear
shit that
a
I wanted to
whisper
talk
saying,
about, man.
"Speak to me."
Because a
I'm
lot of people keep
past
saying
enough.
like Phil Spencer is
I
like
can
the
hear
holy
and
grail
speak
of
to
Xbox,
snakes.
man, and he brought it back from the
Nearly
depths
all
of
known
hell and all
parcel
this
mouths
stuff,
are
right?
descended from
And
Salazar Slytherin.
I'd like to be able to talk
I
to
don't know to
snakes.
what
You
degree,
might
because a
not
lot of
want
people
the ability
keep
to
saying like,
speak past the tongue. It's often
because of Game
associated
Pass
with
and all this
dark
stuff that,
wizards. I
he
haven't
was able to
spoken
bring
it
it
in
back.
ages,
And,
but
they were
I'd wager if
in
I
all of
speak
these
it now,
talks
the door
about
will
Xbox,
open.
the brand
I'm
being
hoping
dead
you're
if,
having
if
second
Game Pass
thoughts.
didn't exist. That I can't, I don't think me or,
I see no
really
reason we
anybody
should stop
outside of the
now.
people who are
It's
talking about or
ironic.
who,
When I left home, I vowed to leave the dark arts behind, and yet
what you
here
call it,
I am.
collaborated on that whole idea
Stand
back in
back.
the day, back at that time can really verify that
I can't believe
specifically.
I'm
But
doing this.
what I do know, right, is that if you track his
It
record
worked.
from when he was
Ominous.
the head
You
of
possess a
Xbox
rare
up until
ability
right now,
indeed.
like
I'm starting to feel
the
left
fucking
out.
brand is
Between the
been
two of
like
us,
on a heavy decline, man. You know what I'm
Never
saying?
mind.
And people keep trying to say this shit like, oh,
So
they're
maybe
selling
the
the.
way
I'm like,
forward.
bro,
like
they're
a
not
myth,
selling the most Xboxes,
Salazar
man.
Slytherin
Even
most
their
likely
fucking
wanted this
service,
to be
man.
difficult
That
to
shit is
solve.
not growing like they wanted to.
The door we
You
came
know what I
from,
mean?
it closed. And there's more than one gate
They
in it.
just came in not too long ago. I mean, it'll be
Close here,
interesting to see
each
what
gate is a
their
clue.
the numbers are looking like right now. Like within the first, second quarters of this year. But from what we know, man, the service has been slowing down in terms of people getting into the service, and they've been fucking losing money. They're not, revenue is down, console sales down, game sales like all this shit is down. All of it. You know what I'm saying? And to make it even worse, right? Um, dude, everybody else fucking passed them in terms of like more people went out and
Somebody
spent
mentioned
fucking
that
six.
too. They were talking about the Switch.
Yeah, it's true though. Like, think about it, man. The Switch came out in 2017, man. That was the same goddamn year that Game Pass came out, man. Right?
This
People keep
journal
saying like,
entry,
oh, Game
it
Pass, like
mentions getting
their
designed
ambitions were
requires
too high for
focus.
the service, and it's because they had a lack of content and stuff. I'm like, dude, then why the fuck for the last 5 years have you guys been posting all these goddamn pictures online,
Salazar
man,
Slytherin didn't
about
make
how
this
Xbox is
easy.
doing so great? If you truly believe, right, it was because of a lack of content. You know what I'm saying? Then what the fuck were you doing? You know what I'm saying? What was all that for? You know? And then it's like people keep saying shit like, oh, their goals were too ambitious. One, we can't verify that. And two, it's a load of bullshit, right? Because if you look at all of their competitors in pretty much every aspect, right? The Switch came out in 2017,
Salazar
right?
Slytherin.
Same year the Game Pass came out. More people, dude, the Switch at right now is
Lumos.
at over 120 million. It passed the PS4 in terms of lifetime sales so far, right? $300, right? Their service, right? Which caveat, it is cheaper. Actually, no, it's not cheaper because fucking Game Pass is $1, nigga. Shit is $1.15, $1 to $15. So actually, Nintendo service is more expensive, right? More people got into their service than people got into Game Pass. More people spent more than somewhere between $400 to like $500 to $600, if not more, right? For what you call it, for the PS5, 32 million people, right? The last confirmed number that we have for the Game Pass sales is 25. You know what I mean? That we know of, and they have not, and that was like a year ago, like over a year, and they haven't given us any updates at all. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, dude, it's not because it's a lack of ambitious goals. It's not that they had too much ambition, like with their goals and stuff. It's like, nah, motherfucker, their games suck. People don't want them. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
I mentioned this before to
Lumos.
them too, because the guy says that this is how ridiculous he said, or what he was saying, which made no sense to me. I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? He said that he's a Game Pass guy, and that's the reason why he chose it. So because he's cheap. And I was like, you got a PS5, right? And he was like, yeah, I got a PS5. And he was like, the only game I bought it for is Final Fantasy 16. I was like, you bought that shit just to play one game? Don't you feel like that's wasteful? And he was like, I didn't. I was like, it's going on PC. I said, are you playing on? I said, do you even play PlayStation games or no? And he was like, well, I really didn't find anything that was interesting.
See, this is the other thing too, right?
What'd you say? All right,
Man.
bro.
Dual disasters. All right, man. All right.
I appreciate.
All right, man.
Have a good one.
See, this is the other thing too, man. And I don't know how many people are actually talking about this part of it, but Sony confirmed, right, that 30% of the people that got into the PS5 this generation, right, were people who weren't part of the generation, the last generation, or part of the, they didn't have a PS4 last generation. You know what I mean? So that means that they came from somewhere outside of PlayStation, whether it was PC, mobile, Xbox One, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We don't know where they came from, but they came from somewhere outside of PlayStation, right? Now, if you do the math, right now, Sony has what, 32 million consoles sold, right? 30% of that is roughly like 8 million people, right? Microsoft just missed their goals for Game Pass by 10 million, I think it was. That's what they said. It was like something like that, 8, 9, 10 million, some shit like that. The 30% of the people that came to the PS5, right, those were the same 30% of people that they could have had for their service. They could have enticed those people, right, in some way, form, or fashion. If their games were so great and the platform was doing so well, why the fuck did they not get those people into their ecosystem? You know what I'm saying? To me, this whole thing about like Phil Spencer being like the holy grail of Xbox and bringing the brand back is complete bullshit, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like, nah, man, this dude has not. Ever since, dude, think about this shit, man. When the freaking Xbox One came out, right? They had games for like decent games, like ones that people, like a lot of people actually like. They look good and stuff like that, right? Up until about like 20, I think it was like what 2016 or some shit, I want to say, right? And that was around the time when all of the games that Don Matrick had signed onto Xbox 360 at the time and Xbox One, those games had dried up. So ever since we've gotten leadership from Phil Spencer specifically, it's been like horrendous. Phil Spencer was the one who signed games like not Crackdown. I think Don Matrick signed Crackdown. Games like Sea of Thieves, games like State of Decay, like all those games like Bleeding Edge and all those shitty games that we got like over the last like 4 or 5 years. That was all Phil Spencer, man. He was the one who canceled big games like Scalebound, fucking Fable, Legends, and Phantom Dust, and all these other games, man. You know, Phil Spencer, this dude literally went in an interview like, I don't know, like a month ago. I forgot who he was talking to, but I watched the shit, man. He was like, I shit you not, man. He said the same shit that he said back in 2019. He was like, I know we haven't been doing what we were supposed to do, and ultimately that's on me. You know, I'm the head of Xbox. I'm like, motherfucker, how many times are you gonna say that shit before? You know what I'm saying? And then it makes it worse when you have all of the fans, man, who are just like, it seems like at this point just blindly following along, you know. And I just don't understand like why you would want to defend. And then, like I said, all that coupled together, right? a lot of people are saying that Microsoft, right? The only way that now the narrative has changed, right? The only way that they can compete, right, is if they purchase Activision Blizzard, right? And I've heard people say this for years, man. They keep saying like, oh, Microsoft didn't have money and all this stuff. They didn't have the opportunity to make acquisitions and shit like that, bro. No, hell no. There was an interview that Phil Spencer did back in like 2014 when he was talking to Ryan McCaffrey, right? And he confirmed all the way back then, right, at the beginning of last generation, that they had the money, to make acquisitions. He had the go ahead. They had given him
Someone brought
all the
that up.
resources that he needed. Yeah, and he didn't do it, right? As a matter of fact, his what you call it? His message at the time was, we are just focused on having games on the platform. It's not about the resolution. It's not about the studios. It's not about, like, we want to maintain good partnerships. We don't need to acquire a bunch of studios. Like, that's what he was saying. He was, and he said, that's not really what we're on. We're just trying to get good games onto the platform, the best games and stuff like that, right? But a lot of people ran with that. They're like, oh, especially in the media. They were like, Microsoft didn't have, money until about like 2017, 18 or whatever the fuck, like when Sony started taking off with the PS4, was when people started saying that's when I'm like, nah, bro. You guys have been brainwashed by the fucking media, man. Microsoft had the opportunity to do it way back then. They just didn't. That wasn't what their focus was. You know what I'm saying? And now, and then there was other shit, man, like where it came out in some form or fashion that they had declined some major deals, man. Spider-Man being one of them. I know you heard about that. Spider-Man was one of them, and I forgot which other game it was. I think it was like Resident Evil or something like that. It was another big like multi-platform game that they had the opportunity to get on their platform, and they declined it altogether.
Your aunt wanted to change your
So
family's traditions.
now, fast forward to today, right? You have a bunch of people, right, who are basically saying like the only way that Microsoft can compete, right, is if they make all of these unprecedented purchases, right, like Bethesda, right, which nobody had like a big issue with now, but now it's Activision, and people are trying to make these false equivalencies, like, oh, Sony's been doing it too.
I said that before. I said this before. In there, I was like, yo, nobody would have a problem with Activision if their promise struck true. You know what I'm saying? If they just kept it third party like they're saying, why make 10-year deals if it's not going to be, you know what I'm saying? If it's not going to be exclusive, if you don't care about that doesn't make any sense. And what I was saying before was, I was like, okay, look. So here's the problem, right? I said, what did I say? I said that, what the fuck was it? That's why I called it. So Phil Spencer is a social contagion. Fishing triangle. Okay. Fishing triangle. I said that he's a social contagion because you guys literally bought into. I want a Game Pass just because I'm cheap, when that's not even the way that you thought before. He literally changed your mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you guys really fucked up the game. I said, he got you to think that, instead of fighting quality with quality, he's fighting quantity with quality. And you guys fell for it. He give you a bunch of mediocre fucking games. Like, you're talking about Hi-Fi Rush, man. You don't buy a $600, $500 console for a fucking indie game. That's wasteful.
But that's the thing too, man. Because like, you've had a lot of these people, man, who have been, quote unquote, sticking with the brand for so long, that at this point it doesn't even really matter what it is.
Excellent
and it's
work.
been clear that that's the case, because you see a lot of these games that are coming out on Xbox. They're doing, for the most part. There are a few of them that have done well, but for the most part, most of them don't do well. You know what I'm saying? Like, people don't complete these games. They have a high drop-off rate.
I said that too. I said I'm curious to see Because you guys saying that you play even more games. I said, but that doesn't necessarily equate to finishing them either. So I'm curious to see what's the completion rate, or you guys are just testing things out. He was like, I told him too. I was like, you claimed that you guys you didn't finish the game. I mean, I'm sorry, you got bored of games, and you lost hope in games, right? That's what you said. But Hi-Fi Rush sparked your interest. I said, you bought a whole $500 console, which is a PS5, and didn't want to play any of the exclusives on there. Like, whose fault is that you don't want to, you're falling out of love with games? And that supposedly Hi-Fi Rush did it. There's many different games that are really high class that you completely missed out on because you didn't purchase it. Now you want to say that I'm cheap and I don't want to buy it. I said, but you're willing to just really just lay it with mediocrity just because you like Xbox? I said, you want to know something? You want to know why there was a great defection when it came to the PS2 and for the Wii U? I said, there's something with the human condition that is humans are social. We're social creatures, right? I said, your first taste of social media was Xbox Live, and how you guys, if you spend your own money, you're going to take that shit heavily, you know? Whether you have to beg your parents to pay for Xbox Live or whatever the case is, now you gotta, since you did all that work, now you have to use it. I said, all those memories that you guys have with the Xbox Live, all those co-op missions you did, and falling off the cliff with a warthog and all that other shit that you guys did, all those memories. I said, ask any Xbox fan. You want to know what you would hear? You will hear. This is what you will hear. All of them talk about multiplayer experiences. Ask a Nintendo fan, and they'll talk about the time that the piano tried to eat them in Mario 64, or Ocarina of Time and their levels, right? I mean, their things. I said, Nintendo did this by mistake when they made party games like Mario Party and Smash Brothers, you know what I'm saying, and GoldenEye. They did it by mistake. Microsoft capitalized on multiplayer games. They deliberately went after this social media, this social aspect, and that's what you guys are hanging on to. When you attack Xbox, you attack your friends too that you've made. It's integrated with you. I said that's why people just got up and left when it came to PlayStation, because all we had is single player experiences. When the third party jumped ship and went to the Xbox 360, the fuck you need a PS3 for? I said, but Xbox Live was the exclusive thing, and that's where all your friends were at. You guys are not playing for games. You're playing for nostalgia and social connection.
And your friends, yeah, the quote unquote community, you know.
That's when they started asking to get into the space. Whoa, what'd you get mad? Why you yelling for? I said, I ain't yelling at nothing. I said, why you coming in here so fuck with all this belligerence? What is this for? Yo, but you making it, you coming in here and you're lying. I said, okay, so when did I lie? He go ahead and he says, well, you're saying that Sony didn't do it either. I said, I didn't say anything about Sony actually. I said, did they not do this? He was like, oh, you talk about Xbox people are going into PlayStation spaces and stuff like that. You lying. I said, are they not? Well, yeah, but PlayStation people are doing it. I said, but I'm not talking about PlayStation people this week. I said, I already talked to them last week. And where did I lie? And then he started throwing a whole bunch of things. I said, hold on, wait, before you go on, because Xbox always like to do this bullshit. You throw a whole bunch of points and everybody gets lost in what you're saying. Let's focus on what you just said. Where did I lie? I mean, you didn't really lie, but you didn't say anything about it. I said, okay then.
You didn't really lie.
I said, yeah. I'm not like that. I'm a consumer first. I mean, I like Xbox. I said, okay. So like my grandma said, if the shoe fits, wear it. I'm not talking about you. You know, you have a PlayStation, you're clearly playing it, and so is the other people that are playing it. Y'all playing Call of Duty on PlayStation. I'm not talking about Xbox, though. That's the thing that y'all keep forgetting. I'm talking about Phil Spencer and how he fucked up the brand. Like you so wrapped up in Xbox. I know. I'm talking about Phil Spencer and how he's lying and how he's a social contagion. He literally changed your mindset to wanting Game Pass and not barely fucking playing, barely completing games, and accepting mediocrity.
And you know what's funny, man? Like
Motherfuckers are quiet as shit.
They'll try to
All I heard was sniffing and clearing their throat.
dude. And then what's funny, right, is you'll hear them throw a lot of metrics out, right? Things like, oh, Microsoft has like, one of the with Game Pass, right? They have one of the fastest growing subscriptions, right? 1 point, right? They have, like the biggest cloud and infrastructure, whatever, cloud gaming, whatever, right? And this is what a lot of times they'll use some of these talking points to justify why they think Game Pass, Game Pass and Xbox as a brand and stuff like that, how they're doing better than what they were before, right? And I'm like, dude, you don't realize you probably don't realize this, but like half the metrics that Microsoft is using, right, to judge their quote unquote success, right, is either based off of like say something like Stadia, right? They basically have no competition, right? That's the first thing. And the other thing is that they're basing the numbers off of their own prior performance a lot of times. You know what I'm saying? They're not basing it off of like the generality. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we made 100% increase on whatever, right? But they never give you the base of what the information was.
And not
which is what leaves a lot of people like. There's a lot of conversation within that room of speculation. They're like, oh, Microsoft just confirmed that they had 100%, but nigga, what was the base number? You know what I'm saying? Because if you have one fucking whatever, right? And then you went from 1 to 3, dude, you just had a 300% increase, but you only had 3. Motherfucker. It's
going to be difficult.
You know what I'm saying? And that's like they've been like very slick and sly with their wording. Phil Spencer, like specifically, because he's been the one who's been in the media a lot. Obviously since he's taken control, and he's been very like slick and sly with his wording and stuff like that, where it gives you just enough information for people to kind of like run with it, right? To make it seem like Xbox and the brand is doing better than what it really is, right? But not enough for people who are kind of like us, right? Where we're like, 100% increase, but what was the base number though? Like, there's that room for speculation, and it gives their fans and stuff like room to argue the point, right? It makes the brand look better than what it is. You know what I'm saying? When it's really not doing well, and then you start getting like a bunch of other information about like how the brand is like losing revenue, how their first party game, they have the least amount of first party games, their games are not selling, first or third party. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like all this stuff is coming out, and it's like, well, we told you so. Like it's pretty fucking obvious. Like if you have half a brain, and you look at this shit, you could tell they're not doing well. I mean, you know what I'm saying? But this shit is all Phil Spencer, man. It's like, dude, this motherfucker's been lying for so long. It blows my mind. Yo, I was thinking about this yesterday. Cause I was actually gonna make. I'm still gonna make a video about this.
Because I'm not
right?
sure I do.
Because that's why I even wanted to talk about it. Because I was gonna make a video about this shit.
I don't yearn to follow in
Microsoft has been the most inconsistent with everything. Everything, from like their game output to all the way to their narratives, right? Because think about it, right? When the Xbox One came out, Phil Spencer was talking about like how they wanted to have all these games and all this stuff, and they didn't need to buy all these studios and all this other bullshit, right? And then from that point, right, they had a dry spell. All of Don Matrix's games that they had signed came out, and they had nothing, right? Phil Spencer had canceled a bunch of games, and guess what their narrative was? Oh, exclusives are counter to gaming. We really shouldn't have them. Remember that? That was around that time. Yeah, we really shouldn't have exclusives. But guess what? A couple years later, right? Fast forward a few years later, right? Microsoft acquires Bethesda. They make like Starfield exclusive and I think that was the big one. Starfield was the big one that was supposed to be exclusive, right? And then they talk about like how uh exclusives are an important part of gaming and all this other type of shit, right? And then now we're dealing with this whole thing with Activision, right?
Sebastian,
Which the messaging is
ominous.
so mixed and
There's a book
backwards
just
and
here.
it's such a contradiction, man, because they keep talking about
Let me
how
go
they
and see
want
the
to
guy wander
reach
around a bit.
so many
May I have a
people,
look?
right? But they go ahead and acquire Bethesda and make the games exclusive and all this other bullshit, right? So it's like it makes me think. I'm like, dude, why the fuck are you guys even doing this shit in the first place? Clearly, you're not trying to reach everybody because
Oh,
you're making your content.
I posted that into that space. All the quotes that they've done. I was like, you was like gaming's for everyone, but how come I can't play Hi-Fi Rush?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? And it's not even the fact that
I was
it
like,
is
or
exclusive.
Forza. No, I don't want to play it. To be honest, I have no interest in it. But I'm just saying, I said, this dude's a liar. He lies
Yeah,
according to what when his other lie runs out, he'll make another one. And he's
he
been doing it
flows
for
with
like
the wind
7 years.
forever. He's been doing it for so long. And that's what I'm talking about. Like Phil Spencer has changed the narrative so many times. You know, that's why. And it's funny. I love it, man. That's why they're
But
having so many issues.
right? Yeah, because all this conflicting shit
Yep.
now it's coming down. Lionel told me this to say. He was like, "Yo, you remember when they said that single player games was a dead end, and then
That's another one. That
and
was
then
another
what do you
one.
call it? What was it? Spider Man, Horizon Zero Dawn. What was the other one?
Breath of the Wild.
God of War, Breath of the Wild, and then all of
Yeah.
a sudden he just congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah. That was another big one, man. You know. But it just goes to show you, man, that this dude, man, has been lying so much. Like now they are to the point, man, when it comes to this Activision deal, man, and they have to like bend over backwards, man, and get raw dog freaking no lube, man, by the CMA with all these concessions and stuff, man, because they have to backtrack on like half the shit that they've been saying for the last like 5, 6, 7 years. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we want to put games everywhere. Then why the fuck did you make Starfield exclusive? You know what I'm saying? Or it's like, what was the other thing that they were getting on their ass about? Um, I forgot. It was uh the I think it was it the play anywhere? I forgot. It was some other shit that they were getting on them about. But they've been backtracking so much on this shit, man. And it just goes to show you like how much Microsoft and
What
Phil
do you
Spencer,
think?
how much
Looks like
they've
a
just
spell book of some kind.
how
This is
inconsistent
incredible.
they are,
A Hogwarts
right?
founder's possession.
In every way possible.
Still
Like
can't believe
I don't
Ominous never
understand
told
like
me about
how
his aunt.
anybody,
What she
right,
found. What will
who
you
has
do with
just
the
kind of sat
spell
back and
book?
looked at all of
What
this
I do
stuff
with every
can
book.
literally
Read
with
it.
a straight face
Having
and a
professors as
clear mind
parents
and
and growing
conscience
that
say
habit early on.
that they truly
But I can do that
believe
later. For
and
now,
trust
I say we
in
explore this
Microsoft's
room.
leadership. You know what I'm saying? I just don't
It's
see it. I don't understand it.
breathtaking.
I'm like, dude, ever since Phil Spencer's been here, this dude has like tried to change the narrative like 6 times.
I don't want
You know
to
what I'm
leave,
saying?
but
Up
I
until
owe you.
to the point where
Both
they
of
have
you.
to like backtrack and all this
Without
shit
both
on
of
all they're
you,
doing, right?
we'd
Everything
never
that
have
they're
made
doing.
it this
Oh,
far.
that's what it was.
We were
They
lucky.
keep signing all
We could
these
have
deals with
died.
all these random
We must.
people, right? All these random companies because they're trying to prove to the CMA and the EU and all these people, the regulators, right, in general at large, right, um, to try to prove that their intention was not to make Call of Duty and the other IP or whatever exclusive to the brand, to the platform, right? But you know what's interesting about that? When it came to them getting the documents, right, sending in the documents for what their intention was, they redacted like half the shit, and whatever they did send in, right, and then all of the other documents they just don't want to show it. Period. That's some shady ass shit, man. To me, I'm like, nah. And don't get me wrong, man. It's not like Sony's a freaking sweetheart, but it's been clear, very clear, right? Who has been more consistent and who has not been more consistent in every way, from content to just your narrative and your goal and your vision. You know what I'm saying? And Phil Spencer, like he's been the one who's been the head for the last decade. You know what I'm saying? And the brand is is worse. It's like worse than what it was before. I don't give
Do
a
this
fuck what
again.
anybody says. You know what I'm saying? It's fucking worse. It's doing worse.
People was, oh,
And
they were even capping for that shit too. They were like, oh, this generation is way better than the last. And then Guap was like, what the fuck are you talking
I
about?
see a way out.
Best news I've heard all day.
it's like,
He was
and
like,
you know
oh,
what's
look at all
funny?
the games that came out. He was like, they had two Halo, or they had, yeah, I think they had two Halos. Two or one Halo. They had the Gears of War. They had all the other shit. Well, you know what happened in the beginning of the generation.
Ominous. About your aunt.
Don't even get me
Please,
started
Sebastian.
on Game Pass, man.
I meant
That's a
what I
whole
said
nother freaking
before.
can of worms,
We swear, right now, never
you
to
know.
engage in anything to do with dark
But
magic
it's
again.
just,
Understood. I'm
I don't
truly
know,
sorry
man.
about your aunt, Ominous.
Like I said, ever since Phil
I
Spencer's been
suppose
head of
after all
Xbox,
this, I
man, the
am
brand has
grateful
been
to know
on a
what happened
decline,
to
man.
her.
And it's funny because
Thank you.
if you look at the games that have been successful, right? Look at the type of games that they are. All of them, pretty much all of them, right? Games like, and these are always the games that people come up and they talk about every time, and they talk about like how this proves, right, how Microsoft is doing great and stuff like that, right? Sea of Thieves was one of them. I think they have what, over 30, that's like 20, 30 million players, right? Players, not sold, just players, right? Which we don't have any of the information on any of the specifics of the players, but 30 was the number, right? Forza, I think, had over 20. Halo had over 20. State of Decay had over 20, right? Um, First thing is, you can count on your fingers how many games have been quote unquote successful, right? Which Halo, by the way, has had a massive drop off since, right? Because we don't have concurrent numbers on any of them. But the other thing is, each one of those games are PC centric games, all of them. Halo, PC centric. Sea of Thieves, PC centric. Forza is kind of like PC like mix. You know what I mean? State of Decay is clearly a PC centric game. The only part of Microsoft's business that's actually doing well is the PC side. Every other part is declining. So you see all of these people who are like capping for the service and the brand and stuff like that, and Microsoft is not even making content for you guys. Think about it, bro. The freaking Game Pass, the Game Pass PC version, right, is like $10 a month. It's cheaper than what you get on the console, right, for a monthly. The guys on PC don't have to pay for online. You know what I'm saying? They don't have to pay for none of that shit. And not only do they get exclusive games in general, right? They get games that don't come to Xbox. Like, what's that game called? Age of Empires still has not come to Game Pass. Fucking games like Dark Tide Warhammer, that game still hasn't come to Xbox. You know what I'm saying? And a couple other games that are slipping my mind right now. But on top of them getting PC games, they come out first, like by like a year or even more. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, they're alienating their core audience. Like everything that they're doing, that's why you see the console side declining. You know what I'm saying? Their console sales and stuff are down. They're not making stuff for you guys. Even with this Activision deal, they're not doing that for you guys. Phil Spencer even came out. He was like, oh, everybody keeps focusing on Call of Duty. What we're really looking at is Candy Crush and whatever other game that they have, Minecraft and stuff, right? They're trying to replicate the success with Minecraft. You know? I'm like, dude, you and Phil Spencer and all these people who are the current head, why it looks the way it does. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it kills me, man. And people wonder why. And that's why when we always